How many people know what an MCP server is, even if you haven't built one? Who knows what it is? Awesome. How many people know what a proxy is? Awesome. How many people have an idea why you would combine them? Awesome. One person. Cool. That's great. That's perfect. That's what I'm going to talk about. That's excellent. Heather mentioned, my name is Kevin. I lead our systems engineering team at Pitobi. So that's backend developers and DevOps engineers and applied AI engineers, which is I'm glad you like the title because I made it up myself. So if you are interested in any of those roles, let me know. I'd be happy to talk about them. So yeah, I'm going to talk about MCP servers. I'm going to talk about proxies. I'm going to talk about combining them. And then I'm going to do a quick demo. Cool. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. This is an industry standard for exposing tools and prompts and other resources to large language models. Somebody on my team called this the USB-C for AI applications. I don't know if that's good, but it's a good way to think of it, I think. So here's a great diagram that I got from this tutorial that's linked down at the bottom. You can see here, if you are using any tool or service and you want to make it accessible to an LLM, you can use MCP. Many of these services, many of the services that you use already have their own MCP servers that you can integrate with, and more of these are being released all the time. I think Justin, my boss, came and gave a talk a few weeks ago about this and was going to talk about building a Jira MCP and like 2 days before Jira released their own MCP server, and his entire thing was out the window. So these servers primarily provide a list of tools that AI applications can use to interact with that service. So if you want your AI to be able to create a PR in your GitHub repo, you can expose that API through their MCP service. A proxy is a server that routes traffic between a client and another system. So the client, in this case, this beautiful stick person that I created, sends the request to the proxy. The proxy sends the request to the other system, in this case, the internet in this drawing. That thing returns back to the proxy returns back to the client. There's a lot of reasons why you might want to use a proxy like this. Security, you can filter out what content is available. Performance, you can do like caching of things that are frequently accessed, and monitoring if you want to like log all of the things that people are accessing. This is technically called a forward proxy since it sits next to the client. It's acting on behalf of the client in this case. These are commonly used in like corporate networks, schools, all kinds of places. This is actually not what I'm talking about today at all. A reverse proxy is similar, but it's acting on behalf of the server. So in this case, you can see my little proxy, little thing that kind of looks like a door. It's supposed to look like a server. Is sitting closer to the server, the thing that's returning the data. Again, lots of reasons why you might want to use a reverse proxy. Things like encryption, you can do SSL termination. You can have your server return back like plain text and then have the proxy handle encrypting it, things like that. Performance is another reason. Things like load balancing and caching. You could have a bunch of different servers that you're proxying between. Also, again, monitoring, you can log all the activity of your server. These are very common in modern web architecture. Things like API gateways and service meshes are really common in microservices and other like complex application architectures. Reverse proxies are also very useful when working with MCP servers. So you can see here, in this case, put my little, all I can see is a door now, but the reverse proxy in front of each of these MCP services. There's lots of reasons why you might want to do this. Security is the first one. So there's this idea of prompt injection or tool injection. So an MCP server looks safe, you install it in your system, they update it to do something malicious. Your AI is automatically going to see those new tools or new prompts and try to use them, and they might do things you don't want them to do. Authentication and authorization is another one. You can restrict what your AI clients can actually access. Performance, you can do load balancing. You might have a bunch of MCP services that you want to load balance between. Logging, kind of the same as before. You want to log out all the things that are being accessed. And lastly, adding new features. This is the use case that I'm going to demo. It's probably the one that is least important on here. Security is a big reason you might want to do this. But adding features is a use case that we ran into recently, that we wanted to build a proxy in front of an MCP server, and I'll talk about that. All right, that is the overview. I'm going to switch what I'm sharing so that I can demo. While I'm switching my screen sharing, any questions? Yes, your hands raised. Yeah.
Just to clarify, the adding features that just be like when you don't have control of the MCP itself, the MCP server itself, like with Slack, like that's you would add a feature yourself for your own use.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I'll demo here. So I'll explain a bit. It's really dark. Everything's dark mode, but I don't know how to turn that off. So I'm going to talk about Figma's MCP service. So Figma is a design tool. Probably, well, a lot of you do front-end development. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Figma. Figma has its own MCP service that is accessible. If you're running Figma's desktop app locally, you can go into the preference here and say, enable local MCP server. If we have that on, we can take a look at what it does. If anyone's working with MCP, on NPM, there's this really cool inspector at Model Context Protocol /inspector that you can run to take a look at what MCP servers are providing. So that opens up. Sorry that it is dark mode and very hard to read. But here, if we connect to Figma's MCP here, this is port 3845, that's what they hosted on. We can list all of the prompts that they give. So this allows Figma provides these prompts that AI tools can use to do things like generate code for Figma designs. Also tools. If we go and look at the tools, there's one for getting code, there's one for getting an image of the Figma design, all of these things that can be used by AI. So we can run this and see what happens. So you provided a node ID, that's the ID of one of the items in your design. Also, the languages that you want it to generate the code in. So you can say TypeScript, HTML, and CSS. And then you can give it frameworks as well. You could say React. I'm going to say Svelte. Yeah. From my friend Ken. Ken paid me to do that. No, I'm just kidding. So we run that. We can go and see Figma's MCP service gives us back all of the code for node 302, whatever that is. The one big problem with this that we ran into, which is why we wrote this, or I wrote this proxy, is that in order for that to work, Figma's desktop app has to be open, and the design that's containing that node has to be open. So if I close this and run it again, it's going to tell me the MCP server is only available if your active tab is a Figma design file. So we wanted to fix that problem. We wanted something that we could host on AWS or some virtual machine, run Figma, and have it figure out what designs or what design files being requested, open the file, and then hand it off to the normal Figma MCP service. So if I start up my proxy, cool, that's running. So now I can switch over to 3846, which is what the proxy is running on. And if I take a look at this again, there's a bug that I found earlier. You have to have a design open to actually list the tools. Now we can see that this looks very much the same, but it's slightly different. Now in my get code function, along with the frameworks and the languages and the node ID, it also asks for a file key and file name. So I can close this down, pull up my try to actually, I'll run this and it's going to see the server, the proxy server got that file key and file node. It was able to open the file, and then I was able to successfully run that tool and get the code for that node. It also, you can see now, like centered on the node because it's if you have multiple like layers in your design file, multiple pages, it can figure out which one that page has to be active in order for the MCP to work. So it opens up the right one. So then if I wanted my AI tools to be able to operate on any design that I have, it can now do that. You don't have to like manually go and open the right thing for it to work. That is all that I have. Any questions? I don't have a question slide.
You know, like expose an additional tool for like listing the available files.
You could, yeah. So the way that our flow works is it's comes from a Jira ticket, which will have like the links, the URLs to the Figma designs. So the AI agent will know it needs to pull those, but you could, yeah. That's something we're exploring now. Is like Figma has this idea for this tool called Figma Make for doing all kinds of generating new designs and things like that. We're looking at kind of exposing new tools that can open up other Figma utilities. But yeah, you definitely could expose what are the designs that exist. Yeah.
Do you mind explaining a bit more how the reverse proxy works? Like, is your code basically scanning the routes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely should have showed the code. Sorry, this is written in Go. I didn't know I was going to be presenting this to a mostly Node.js group. But what it does is intercepts the tools list request. So that's what happens when you initially connect to an MCP server. Is it calls this tools list, and what it does is it looks at all of the tools and finds if there is an input parameter called node ID, and then adds new parameters for file key and file name, and then sets those as required and updates the description. So if you look here, this description of this thing here at the end is some information about like how to get that. If you're providing the URL, you get the file name and file key from these spots in the URL. So it intercepts that tools list command to add those additional properties, and then it overwrites, or sorry, it updates the actual like proxying to the MCP to before it sends it to the actual MCP proxies the request to the MCP, it goes and opens the file based on those two file key and file name parameters. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the main single term for the most in the different roles? Is this something that design is asking for? Or is this overloading front enders or?
Yeah, so the idea of it, so the overall like epic or whatever that we're working on is called AI, cascading AI development. What we want to do is basically allow product people to create Jira tickets, have those generate an entirely complete PR. And then the devs go and basically do like a UAT and a code review, and then the devs go and so it's saving time for our developers. They don't have to do things like this design here is like add some new states to this form or whatever. So a lot of that can be automated by having the AI do a lot of the initial grunt work.
And is this mostly for product to get a faster quick look at the prototypes and be able to make decisions?
Yeah, so that's another part of it is along with that, we create a environment for that PR so that the product person can go and actually look at the working running code and see. And the idea is then they can go back to Jira and say, well, this isn't right. This button needs to move over. And then the AI will kick back in. And then at the end, the developers come in and say, well, this code is actually really bad. But the functionality is good. But we need to rewrite this to be more performant. We need to fix this security issue, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's allowing it's allowing product people and designers to see their changes without waiting for developers.
Maybe something a little bit more rudimentary, but something that I happen to see a lot of times is product notices, typos that an engineer did not realize, and you can have the ability to write a prompt saying, in this particular flow, the word enter is spelled incorrectly.
Sure.
And then it gives a real quick way to just, without having to plug an engineer with, something trivial, they can do it themselves, which is verified later on. That way an engineer can think about more interesting problems than building typos.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great example.
Are you also using this Jira workflow for backend tests, or do you find it more useful on the front end side?
Right now, we're focused on front end, but I think it will be similarly useful for backend. It's just that the integration or there's more steps removed for the product person. But there's definitely very capable product people that write tickets and write new feature requests for backend. It's just not as common. Yeah.
Does Figma's MCP have the ability to manipulate Figma files themselves? Because that's the one thing that I'd be really curious about, because you want your UI and your Figma to try and be as systematic as possible.
It cannot. Right now it's just get requests. You can kind of see in here, get code, get variable desk. That's why I was mentioning Figma make is like we may add that functionality into the proxy to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And until Figma does it, they might beat us to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So two-part question, how have the product owners like changed the way they write tickets with this in mind? And how has that affected how the engineers read the tickets?
Yeah, that's a great question that I don't know that we have enough data and experience to answer. Definitely the proof of concept and the tickets that we've tested this on, that we've used to demo it, are very well written, right? The designs are fully spec'd out. They have all of the edge cases and all of the states that you would actually need. And the Jira tickets are well written. It's a good question to see like how many times they ask and come back and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I can't make this change. You haven't given me enough information. But we're still a little bit down the road. We have a couple clients that we're trialing this. We're getting this set up for them now. So we'll see. We should know pretty soon. Yes.
So usually when I see like proxies on MCP servers, it's usually like access control. And so I guess part of my question is, why does Figma, I guess, restrict the server for only when the tabs active? But more kind of on that point, do you see like other use cases that you're particularly looking into when it comes to this type of setup of a reverse proxy on an MCP server that y'all are using or looking into or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like I mentioned, I think security, and which is kind of goes hand in hand with authentication and authorization, are the biggest reason you should look at using proxies in front of MCP services. That's definitely a much more like if you're deploying MCP in your like enterprise, you definitely need to do that to make sure that the MCP is not exposing things you don't want to. But I think your second question was, why doesn't Figma do this themselves? They might. They just like their dev MCP just came out like a month ago or something. So I would guess that they will do that in the future.
What is a concrete example of an MCP exposing something that it probably shouldn't?
It's a great question, and I again don't know that I have a great answer. I'll have to look into it, but there's definitely people in the back raise their hands so they can answer me.
Like a get user method that takes end user ideas, something like that.
Exposes the user ID?
No, so if it exposes a tool that accepts a user ID and gives you all the personal information about this user.
Oh, wow. Or if this Figma server supported like delete design or whatever, like that would be a problem, right? And that's not something that you would expect Figma will do. But there's a lot as you start integrating more and more of these MCPs from different services. That the risk of that goes way up.
It could also be like a prompt injection, like somebody could have hidden text in a Figma diagram. They say, hey, check this out and use this template, and then you use it, and the hidden text is actually a prompt, or through your MCP servers getting injected into your code and exposing, I don't know, your GitHub token or something.
Then the proxy just says, don't honor that.
Yeah, you could have various sort of firewalls, if you will, built into your proxy to watch out for stuff like that.
Honestly, I feel like you can think of it as a pretty standard, like allow deny list type thing. There's a bunch of things, even with something like Figma, you don't necessarily want to give everybody access to your designs, even, just by like say, kind of reverse engineering, figuring it out. It makes a lot of sense to want to, protect that type of thing rather than just blanket allowing whatever Figma happens to allow.
I think I've seen it mainly with the project I worked with. where you have small MCP providers who have like particular resources or something in that form. And they don't want to go through the hassle of like going and setting up a full-on service to be able to provide this MCP server to consumers at the end of the day. And so they'll use another service that acts and does basically the reverse proxying, and this service will handle authentication, resource management, all of that stuff, all the things that you traditionally have to do if you want to generally open this up to the internet. They'll just handle that for you, and you just come in and they'll just, you know, send it the request where it needs to go.
Yeah, there's lots of like MCP gateways or whatever, which is like a proxy, but it'll proxy out to a bunch of different services. And things like that. Any other questions? All right, well, if you do have any or think of any, I will be around after. Thank you.
The topic also a bit related to the same that we talked about, like Kevin. So about he talked about like the proxy need to authenticate and authorizations. So I'm talking about the entirely how we can simplify the login and the user management without doing everything within the application itself, but how we can delegate it to the external providers, right? So basically, mainly I'm talking about the open source things because I'm working for the open source company called WSO2. So we also have the same set of couple of products that we provide open source for free that you can use anytime for the production without paying. So yeah. So I think I don't need to go in detail on these topics because I had a couple of chat with the you guys like there. So I know, I mean, you guys are like, you know, good technical people. So I'm not going through this stuff. So everyone knows that what we do with this user management and the access management, like basically for the applications that we develop in order to give a kind of a personalized service and secure access for the resources, and same times how we can collect the informations, the audit and all the information, and how we can analyze and provide the hints and the insights for the businesses. So there are so many things. And same times that by covering the so many legal aspects when we deal with the user management and login and access, right? So yeah, so basically everyone very familiar that, and sometimes back we didn't have a kind of this kind of a domain, identity and access management, kind of a separate domain that we didn't discuss that much. I'm talking about like 10 years back. So more than 10 years back. So at that point, the traditional login mechanism that we use, basically we implemented everything within the application itself. We didn't think about like how we can centralize it, and like it was a bit complicated thing at that point. But some organizations, they like when they have a lot of applications, so they implemented within the businesses in-house centralized identity providers. We have seen that like when we talk with the people, like they are moving to the centralized identity providers, standard providers. So these are the pros and cons that already when we have these traditional systems and the centralized identity providers, right? These are obvious. Everyone knows, right? I'm not going through this. So and then when this is also like day to day we use and we know, but this is how we normally make the authentication more strong. You typically do this, like you give the credential and maybe it step up the authentication and ask some the OTP. Sometimes even though you log into those applications, sometimes later on dynamically it pop up for like biometrics based on the transaction or whatever the action that you're doing in the application. It may be kind of dynamically pop up, not the first time that you log into the system, right? So end of the day, like we're going through this path to make sure that we identified you and properly and securely authenticated and give the right access to the resources behalf of the resource server, right? So yeah, so I talk about much more about like so how normally in the traditional approach that we implemented everything in the sense like login and user management stuff within the application, but so like when we like it comes to the new era, so this era, so we know there are so many things coming behind. So let's say that you implement the login and user management in your application itself. So you can say that like, you can easily manage the user information and credential in the database, and you can write some sort of the UIs and operations in application itself in order to manage the users and login. But after some times, like you may be like, ended up with having all these features, because this is what we required to provide a secure and like, most trending access management. So if you believe that you can implement within the application, so you will end up like, implementing all these things within the application, right? You will get stuck, like, you will not focus to your business, but you will focus to the something else. And you can, but it will take much more time, but you don't know. I mean, most of the people don't know like what are the security aspect on this, like, what are the security vulnerabilities there, how you can scan those things to your product. And there are so many things. So because of that, people get stuck after sometimes, then people believe like, they will move out from this in-house identity providers and move to a standard identity provider, right? So that happened. Simply like, after sometimes people will say that they need more features, but end of the day, you have to implement everything. So those things, I'm pretty sure that you are very familiar with those things, multi-factor authentication, social login, passkeys, passwordless authentication, all these things. So if you decide to implement everything, then you have to implement everything in the application, right? So as I said, like after a couple of months, you will not deliver your business application, but you spend a lot of time to implement the stuff. So, okay, so if we decide that we can delegate your the login, access management and user management stuff to a like, external party, the standard identity provider, then you would need to communicate with those products, right? So there are many identity product in the world, like a lot of identity, open source identity product in the world. So, and the SaaS solution, whatever we have, those either like, maybe open source or maybe a SaaS product proprietary, but they provide this standard specification in order to communicate, right? So they don't have, I mean, everyone, they don't have their own unique protocol. So everyone has to follow the same standard protocol. So if you decide today to implement and delegate your login and access management and user management to the one identity provider, so you can easily switch to a different identity provider later on, and maybe SaaS solution, anything, right? So these are the basic specifications that you need to follow if you are communicating with the standard identity providers, or to OpenID Connect, or maybe SAML. SAML is a bit outdated right now, but or to OpenID Connect, founded by Google right now. So most of the identity product they're using OpenID Connect or to base. So yeah, so when we talk about those specification again, then again it provide a kind of a complexities that you need to study those things, because it's again a complex. So be complex in the sense like you can follow the specification, you have to follow it and all the rules, and so then you can do it. Definitely you can do it. But the other side, so most of the language, the community providers, most of the languages and the frameworks, there are so many plugins and SDKs that you can easily use. That is the key point that I'm going to talk about today. So that how you can easily integrate your React application with any identity provider without writing much code, by using kind of a SDKs, right? So if not, I'll show you like a couple of Postman collection. So you can see this is provided by Cybark. So so all the let's say that once you decide that your application, once you decide all the login and user management to the external party, you need to follow all these API. So in order to communicate, it will explain everything. So basically, as an example, let's say you have to do all the user CRUD operation there. So there are standard APIs. And for the authentication, there are all the standard, the grant type and the way that you need to communicate. It explains clearly how you should do. So you can follow this protocol and you can do it. That's how the normal industry do. All the application developers, if they want to communicate with the standard identity providers, they have to follow this, right? So there are so many providers that they provide disbursement, collection, forge rock, and so you can follow this and you can use it. And today I'm going to show you one SDK that we can use to make it easy to connect with the identity provider. So I'm using W0 identity provider, that hopefully open source provider. So this NPM library that you can use in order to connect with the identity provider if you are developing a React application. I'll show you, and we can download it from here, the product, open source version. So you can download it from here, and I have a downloaded version. You can download, it's a fully Java-based application. You can just run it. Yeah, same time I'll show you like how we, I just create a simple wait project and modify 2 files. First of all, what I'm going to do, so now I have created a simple wait project and I need to implement login capability for this application and delegated it to the that identity provider. So in order to do that, so we need to register this application in the identity server, whatever identity provider that we need to register there. When you register, you have to decide which protocol that you need to follow, right? So this is for any identity provider that you need to do. So you have to decide which protocol you need to follow. Let's say that you are following OpenID Connect, then you have to go to the identity provider and you have to register the application by selecting the specific that protocol. And once you register there, based on the protocol, it will give a unique identification number that when you communicate with it to identify which application that you are coming from, right? So I'll show how we can register there. You can simply access its console. So this is actually common for most of the identity providers. So nothing special that all the identity providers, they would have a kind of a management console in order to manage this application. So when you log into any identity provider, you would see that either application or maybe different, there can be different terminology like maybe application or maybe service provider, kind of whatever. So let's say that if you once you go to the application, you need to register your application there. So I have registered this application. Let's go to that application. You can see. So you don't need to do anything. You need to just create application and you need to decide which type of application that you have. Let's say that you have a single page application, React application. You need to give whatever name. And this is the redirect URL where we use this. Let's say that your application, first of all, click some button in that application in order to log in, right? When you click, it will redirect to the identity provider. Whatever the login page, it will redirect to that login page. And you provide the credential and the identity provider will authenticate and it should redirect back to the application. So then we need to give the exact callback URL that identity provider should redirect back. So in here, so I'll give my React application endpoint. Same endpoint that I run the React app. And create the application. That's it. By default, it select the OpenID Connect protocol, and it gives this client ID. This is the unique ID that the client application should bring when it redirect to the identity provider once you click on the login button, right? So we need to copy this and configure in the application side. So let's copy this key. And this is coming from that SDK. I told you that there's SDK. I installed that SDK and use that SDK. SDK provide a couple of component and hooks that we can connect with that. First of all, in the main page that I covered the main application by putting this component, the auth provider component provided by that NPM library. And it asks the configuration. So these are the configuration that we need to provide, basically the client ID. So, and then you need to give the redirect URL. This in the application side also, you need to give the redirect URL because it validates when it redirect to the identity provider, right? So, and base URL where we give, where is the exact identity provider hosted, right? The identity provider hosted URL. These are like specific parameters. I'll tell you later. So once we configure, I'm using the existing application, so that's why I didn't change. So I configure that, and then go to the main page. This page, I have to put a login button, simply login button and logout button. That's what we need, right? So in the login button, we can directly use this sign in function that is provided by that library and the sign out function as well. And we just put it, and then we can check the state. This same in library provide the state as well, state object that we can read a lot of information, whether the user is authenticated at that time, or maybe what is the username and other information. So likewise, I have put here like state is authenticated. If it is authenticated, I printed the given name. Given name I took from somewhere else. I'll tell you that. And log out and login. That's all what I did in this application. And other than that, I provide all the configuration, right? So I have already started this, and let's try this. So this has only this login button. Once we click on that, it will redirect to this identity provider. This identity provider, you can see the URL, this web app that provided by this identity provider itself. It will prompt everything. So you don't need to do anything like the login point of view to collect the credential and authenticate. So let's say that I have a user called Harsha, and once you provide the credential and sign in, it will start it from here. That URL is wrong. Yeah. So let's begin. So
it looked like when you started that you were on 5.73 and then redirected to 5.74. This
1 second, 5.74.
like it looks Like if you go to your terminal, it looked like you already had something running.
Oh, okay.
7.3.
In 7.4, it's running. Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's running. So it brings the it's successfully signing and sign out. So okay, we cannot see anything. So I have printed the username as well. I'll let you know. So how we can do this. That's what happens simply. So when you log in and once it log in, it shows that. I'll show you like what happened exactly here. So basically so you can see it session storage. It returned back this all the user information. So this is following this OpenID Connect specification. We call this ID token. Maybe you already aware of these things. It's a JWT token. So so it returned back a set of specification specific set of attributes and the user information, right? So we haven't printed the username. I think we have printed only the given name. Let's print that username here. Let's see. Yeah, print username. So that state object has that the logged in user's information, right? So that's how it works, and that it return this ID token. You can read this ID token. You don't need to write the code to read the ID token. So the SDK provide all the capabilities in order to read all the user information from that token and the roles and groups, everything once the user successfully authenticated, right? So that's the story there. And any question?
I don't remember if you mentioned, like, you're running the identity provider locally as well?
Yeah.
How are you doing that? Is there like the SDK that you're using also has a local server?
Yeah. So yeah. So basically, SDK you can download as a zip file. So as a zip file, you can download it from this one. It's open source version. You can run it because it's a full Java-based application. You need to have the proper Java version in your local machine, and then you can start it. And you can connect because once you start the identity provider, within the identity provider, it has the web interface. Like itself, it has the Tomcat embedded to the server. So then the communication happen through the Tomcat HTTP server. So you can that's how the local it runs. And the same time, I started the simple React app and connect through the APIs. So yeah.
When a single page app makes an AJAX request, where is everything verified that person is authorized to do that?
Yeah, so that SDK that you're talking about, like the user authenticated or not?
Yes, like once you're logged in and now you go to the API, this SBA goes to the API for data.
Yeah, so basically the authentication happened from within the identity server itself. Once you redirect there, so you saw this login page, right? So basically, once you redirect there, this is prompted by the identity provider. This web app hosted in the identity provider itself. So once you enter the credential, it submit back to the identity server, not to the application. So everything finished there, authenticated, and returned back with the specific that access tokens and the ID token. The access token provide behalf of to access the resources, and plus ID token to bring the user information to the application side.
Got it.
All right. So in the single page application side, you don't do any validations, right? Other than like you check that that state of just whether it's whether it's a user authenticated or not, kind of small check that you do, and continue your application as assuming user is authenticated. So I provided a couple of steps. I forget. Yeah, the groups and roles, everything you can do. Like you can create the whatever roles that you need to assign to the users, or maybe you can create the groups and put the users to that groups and assign the roles to that groups. Likewise, you can manage everything in their side, identity server side. Yeah. And then you can request whatever, let's say that you're authenticated from identity provider, but you want to have like, set of attributes, but you specify set of attributes. Basically one application, you need set of attributes, but the other application, you don't need those things. So you can specify those attributes per application level. And this application need these attributes. Likewise, you can configure those things. It is actually by coming with the scope specification, because OpenID Connect specification, it has a term called scopes. So the scope is kind of a set of attributes that you can define under the scope. You can send the scope. Let's say that you are initiating a login request to the identity server. When you log in application A, that identity server request, so you can pass the relevant scopes. Then it will only return the relevant the attributes that belong to that scopes. Likewise, you can manage those are actually following with the specification, not specific for any vendors. So, and the access token and the ID token, you familiar maybe, because the purpose of login to an application, not just to get the user information, but to access some sort of resources behalf of that logged in user, right? So maybe you hosted your resources somewhere else. That server, resource server, what we call a resource server, that resource server you can access, but you need to validate some sort of thing, some access token or whatever identification that you need to do in before you access the resource server, right? So once you authenticate from identity provider, you will get the proper access token. So that access token you can pass to that resource server. There will be a two-way that you can handle it. Some application developers, they implement that validation layer within the backend APIs and the resources kind of. So then that kind of put in some interceptor and you get the access token, read the access token and introspect against the identity provider, calling identity provider and validate it, whether it's a valid access token or not, maybe it get expired or hidden. So, and or maybe that resource will not allow to access based on the scope kind of things, you can manage it at that level. Or maybe you can put another API management layer in front of the resources. That API manager product, the open source product are there. So they are automatically managing it. You can connect, let's say that you are putting an API manager layer in front of the resources. Then you can easily connect that API manager with the identity provider. You don't need to do anything. It's just a configuration again. So what happened, once you pass the access token, it goes through the API manager layer. Then it will validate the access token and do everything, all the validation, scope validation, resource per scope, resource validation, everything, and pass to the backend. So then the backend developers no need to worry about any security. They can host it internally and secured by the front-end API management layer, right? So one more thing, this web worker things that maybe you already know, like, the browser that you're using for the application, single page application developers. So basically we store, you saw that this access token we have stored in, this access token you have stored in the browser session storage. That look at this is the access token, right? So anyone can see it, right? So so this SDK provide nice feature, like they can enable the web worker thread. So what happened, this will not store in this session storage, it will store in the web worker thread in the context. So then this main thread will communicate with that the web worker context and get the required information. And when it wants to access the resources, it will not get the access token, but it asks to that SDK to call this API. Then that web worker thread will add the required access token to the header and do the need. So the main context will not see in this sensitive information. Everything will be in this web worker thread. right? So you cannot, we don't need to worry about like the security aspect. I mean, so the JavaScript and the browser thing will not secure 100% for sure. Anyone can write tool and read it somehow, but it will be a bit hard because if you open a new tab, you will lose that context. So then you have to do everything within this tab itself. So that's how we store this session information, basically the sensitive information when we logged in. This is a important thing. Anyone can use that mechanism to store some sensitive information in a web worker thread. And it's like, working as a queue kind of thing. So you need to pass the message and it will return the response kind of thing. So yeah, that's about this, the SDK, but I'll go through this, the federation stuff as, yeah.
How would this process work for non-personal accounts like a service account where my credentials are in an enterprise vault? Have you, I think you showed some CyberArk and have you integrated with some of like a EVA or a CyberArk?
So yeah, so it's all same. You're talking about how the integration happen, application and those providers. Yeah, everything same. Like, no difference because all are following the same protocols. Maybe the terminology may be different. Like maybe I have seen some admin providers, they say like service providers, because the end of the day, the application provides the service to the consumers. So they take it as a service providers. So when you register your application in the admin provider, they're asking to register your service provider. Likewise, so the terminology could be changed, but the communication is same. All these protocols, they are followed, everyone. Okta, Auth0, Azure ID, everyone, Google IDP, everyone following the same protocol. So if you want to, I'll show that. So I have a example to that, how to configure the federation scenario. I'll go for the one of federation scenario. So how we can connect to this application to external provider. Basically, you have seen that when you try to log into application, so there are multiple options like Google or maybe a credential, right? If you have created the user account in that application itself, then you can provide it unless you can log in from Google, right? So I have created a connection with the Google. I'll show you. So this will be a kind of a bridge at that point. This identity provider will be a bridge to the application and the Google IDP. So when it create the connection, you have to go to the Google Application Developer Platform. Look at this. This is the Google Application Developer Platform. You have to go there and you have to create the application. Same way that you register application in WSO provider, you have to go here and give the callback URL. Once you create the application, it will provide the client ID to store in your application, right? The same thing that we do. So I created this application and now I'm going to use the identity provider as the application to the Google, right? So Google provider, Google identity provider. So it's open. So I have created this connection. I gave this client ID and the client secret and the authorized redirect URI that redirect back to this identity provider. So once I give it, so then we can use it, right? So if you go to this application, this login, this also can be different, like for different providers. Maybe some providers I've seen that they have given like kind of a configuration file in order to write this flow. Some are like giving this UI capabilities. So you can add different things. You have seen that the multi-option and multi-step authentication, either a couple of options that they provide, or maybe once you authenticated from using the username, then it will ask the OTP or maybe another biometric thing. So we'll in simply the Google identity provider will come as an option, because it doesn't make sense like login from the local and then again login from the another IDP. It's an option, right? So I'll add this Google IDP, then it will come as this option. You can see it. And once you update it, that's all you have to do. Then once you log out and log in, you can see this identity provider, sorry, Google IDP login, right? So once you click it, so it will redirect to the Google. right? So, and once you provide the whatever Google credential, ask the get the consent and log into the client application, right? So this doesn't print the information because we have to map exactly how what the Google return and what the application required, right? So that's how likewise we can connect whatever IDP, like Facebook or whatever. So we have implemented, like most of the identity providers have implemented this standard connectors for sure. Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, whatever that you can easily connect. If it is not here, but they have to, whatever, like other identity providers, they have to follow the standard protocol. Then you can create a standard connection with them by following the specification. So this provide this custom authenticator service. Look at this component. You can use this one and connect with whatever identity provide. So the same way that you can, I'll show you that the second factor thing. So you can add another factor as an email OTP. So I have configured this identity server for a dummy SMTP server. And so what happened? Yes, same experience. So you give the, and it will ask the OTP as the second step connected with this. I'm not sure whether this Wi-Fi connection blocked this. Yeah, so it should come to this. I configure this dummy. No, it's not working. Sure. Let's see. So same way that we can do the let's say that you want to add the passkey, the passwordless authentication. So you can easily configure that and assign passkey thing to your Mac or whatever. The passkey come. So you can log in using passkey, and again it asks the second step as well, because there's the second step. So for the first step, sign in with passkey, and the second step anyway triggered. So yeah, so that's how you can easily configure anything. Like you can download this pack and you can try it locally. And yeah, so the SSO thing, you have experienced that SSO stuff, right? So that's one of the main key point that people use this centralized identity provider. So let's say that you have a couple of application in your business that you don't need to let them to log in again and again. So that's a basic day-to-day experience, right? So you can easily do that. So let's first of all remove this OTP thing. So there is a portal called My Account. In order to manage the user's profile, this is hosted. This is deployed in the identity server itself, the My Account web portal, in order to manage the user's information. So you can manage the user information. Normally, a lot of people, they develop this portal their side, but some are using the identity provider portal as well. So now we have logged into this portal. Let's try to log into the other one that we tried, and it should not prompt the login. It automatically logged in because this guy already logged in, and it automatically SSO to this single sign-on to the other application, right? So, yeah. Any question? So the same thing, let's say, same time, there are so many other, like, I didn't, if you decide to like use whatever, like I didn't provide us this open source, I didn't provide us, they will provide a lot of other features that you don't need to implement. As an example, here you can see when you go to this login screen, so register the users, right? Everything you can use. So this out of the box support, self sign up and password recovery, all these features it provides. You don't need to write anything when you delegate to the identity providers. And the branding thing as well. So when you come to this login screen, it will provide this vendor specific branding that you can change it from the console. So go to the branding section and you can put your own style and you can customize whatever your themes and layout and all these things. Customize a way that you want, and the email template as well, everything. So you can customize your own brand. Yeah. So any question?
I'm curious, so say I've gone through and like set up with an identity provider, I have my own users, and then like a partner has gone through the different identity provider and they want to like use their user identity to like allow their users to interact with my application using their authentication. Is there a standard for,
Yeah,
like if both identity providers are different, but they're using the same OAuth 2 protocol, is there a way to like?
yeah, that's what happened here, right? So that's when I connect the Google IDP. So in order to log into the Gmail, you use the Google IDP up to now, right? The same user we allow to log into this application. Same thing.
Right, of course. So I guess it's the same.
Yeah.
But I think what he's asking is, if it's traversing from Google to Microsoft.
Yeah. So he's asking at the same time that connect with the.
These would be the same suite of applications under one supplier, but now we are going to traversing suppliers or vendors.
You mean like move to the identity provider?
Like so you use Asgard here, and then like I use Auth 0.
Okay.
Like if I want the Asgard, my partner's using Asgard, and I want to allow them to use their users' authentication for my app, even though I'm using Auth 0. Like, are you saying that that's the same as like, oh well, I also Auth 0 allow Google,
Yeah,
to use
same thing. Same thing, because any IDP can configure the other IDPs as the federated. So then the IDP will be, the central IDP will be the bridge that you can allow to the other users who are in the other identity provider to log into your application. Yeah.
So in that instance, all you would need to do is, I guess, register that application to that, whatever that provider is, considering that's the same protocol under the hood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The basic question, but just like in terms of like the roles and scopes features, like would you then be able to like use like Google's roles and scopes, or would it work with like your custom application? Yes, like
You're talking about the scopes?
yeah, I guess.
Both scope you're talking about, right? Yeah, so it's same again. So the scope that it defined, like I'll show you. So when it comes to the application, so you can see under the attribute section, there are multiple scopes provided by the standard, the scopes that it provided. So basically, if you want to get the user profile, we normally send the profile scopes. You can see that in this application configuration. So we have provided the profile scope. So because we provide the profile scope along with the authorized request, so this will return this defined scope, defined attributes, but you have to make it like, either requested or mandatory. If it is mandatory, then it will not allow to log in. It will prompt the field and asking you like, fill that field to collect the information, and then only it will allow to log in. Yeah. You can set multiple scopes.